Welcome back on the AM show. It's good to have you this wet Tuesday morning, wherever you are, though. Try to stay safe. But speaking of the weather, especially as it's pummeling out there, we have Joshua Asamoah, who is a senior forecaster at the GMED. He'll give us scope on what to expect in the course of today. Joshua, very good morning to you. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning.
Great. Do tell, we're already experiencing rain here in the Greater Accra region, at least some parts here in Kokomlemle. It's pelting hard. What can we expect in Accra and beyond by way of weather today?
All right. So for most parts of the country, it's quite cloudy. Yesterday, we had a rainstorm that tracked over the northern portions of Ghana, and that has left some cloudiness behind.
Joshua, I beg your pardon. Just speak up a little for us, please.
So I'm saying that yesterday we had some rainstorm that tracked over the northern parts of the country. It's now towards the western portion of the continent, but it has left some cloudiness behind. And so areas in the western side of the northern sector, that is the upper west and parts of the Savannah region, will continue to experience the cloudy conditions with pockets of slight rain. The impacts there will be very low. That's because most of the heavy or intense parts of the storm has already left the country. But for us in southern Ghana, we're seeing some cloud developments towards the east. So areas in the Greater Accra, Volta regions are already engulfed by this rain clouds. That's what is producing some rainfall over parts of Greater Accra this morning. It's not going to give any high impact rainfall along the coast, but generally it will just be a low impact rainfall. Where we're expecting that the impact will be higher or medium will be areas in the southwestern portion of Ghana. That's around the Ashanti, western, northwestern, and parts of the Ahafo and Bono regions. But for us along the coast, especially in the Greater Accra, Central, and Volta regions, the weather generally will be cloudy with slight to moderate rainfall. Today, we are not expecting so much sunshine. We will mostly see cloudy conditions and occasionally some breaks of short spells of sunny conditions. Because of that, temperature will not be too high. We're expecting around 30 degrees Celsius as the maximum for the day. Areas around the Kumasi, Abetifi, Obuasi areas will have very low temperatures today because we're expecting very cloudy conditions throughout the day. So temperature will just be around 29 to 30. That's the maximum for the day. So for us along the coast, we should just expect the cloudiness to persist with some breaks of sunshine occasionally, and then some intermittent rainfall, but basically slight to moderate rainfall, nothing heavy for Greater Accra today.
So you're saying some cloudiness and slight to medium rainfall, Joshua, but believe you me, I've seen the rain pelting out there this morning, and it doesn't look very slight to me. It's the kind of rainfall that sometimes wreaks havoc. So how slight is the slight going to be?
So like I was saying, there's that rain cloud which is already in the country producing some rain over parts of Greater Accra. But this is not going to be persistent throughout the day. So we're expecting that cloudy conditions will be there, but then the intensity of the rainfall will reduce as the day progresses. And so we'll be getting more of the slight to moderate rainfall for the day. Some few areas might get some slightly higher intensity, but it will just be this morning. As the day progresses, that kind of rainfall will just reduce in intensity, and we'll be getting more of the slight to moderate rainfall.
Well, thank you so much, Joshua Asamoah, for bringing us the latest by way of the weather, and we wish you the very best of the day, sir. Joshua Asamoah is a senior forecaster at the Ghana Meteorological Agency. He just joined us with what to expect in the course of today. But let's hit the newsstands, in fact, the newspapers, as we engage Liz Hayfanasari, media consultant, who is our guest this morning. A very good morning to you, Liz. All right, so we'll try to get Liz on as and when she's ready. And good morning, Liz. You may have to unmute.
Yes. Good morning, Benjamin.
Great. Good to have you in your African Prince this morning. Well, here we are. It's a bit of a wet morning. I don't know whether you caught the weather forecast, but slight to medium rains expected in the course of today. And we'd all just have to take precautionary measures because the day started on a rather nippy note. But today I'm going to start on an interesting note. Any takeaways for you from the weekend leading into let's say yesterday, stories that maybe you would not technically find in the newspapers? Ghana knocking on the IMF's doors, and well, something we'll be discussing today. The labor unions calling for their COLA, cost of living allowance, 20%. Any quick reflections on that before we get into the papers?
Cost of living allowance. We know that the prices of goods and services have gone up and have gone up tremendously, and so people are finding it difficult to make ends meet. We find out that a lot of people are claiming that they're living from hand to mouth, and when it happens like that, then productivity goes down because people look for other means of getting money. So if we're not going to increase their allowances, if we're not going to increase their living allowances, if we're not going to improve their standards of living, then you probably won't be getting the kind of productivity that you would want from those that you're paying, because they need to make a living and they need to make ends meet. Right now, when you look at the wages, if somebody is working in a public institution and has children going to school, then it's a very difficult and very dire situation for them. And then transportation hikes have come in and people are struggling. I know somebody who walks to the office every morning just so he can keep something for his family. And so it is something that the government really needs to look at, because right now our standard of living is very high.
And speaking of which, there's also news about the IMF, but it's here, so let me just get into the daily graphic so we take a look at it. There's driving transformation agenda, you receive needed support, President assures private sector. There's also teachers declare industrial action, which I was just talking about. Liz, open your defense, court directs Major Mahama's alleged killers, and there is that big one. IMF team arrives today led by mission chief. We've seen a statement from government talking about the commencement of engagement with the IMF, the International Monetary Fund. Let's turn to page 16 to get snippets of that story then. And a high-level delegation from the IMF will arrive in the country today to start discussions with the government on how to support the country out of its current economic challenges. Mission Chief Carlo Dralevish will lead the team of senior officials of the fund from its head office in Washington, D.C., United States of America. The team will also include the country resident representative, Dr. Albert Tuna Mama. On Ghana's side, the president, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, will lead a task force of economists, ministers, and advisors, while the Ministry of Finance will put together a team of economists, financial, and social technocrats for the discussions. Last Sunday, if you'd recall, the Minister of Information, Kojo Oppong-Nkrumah, said the president would personally lead a task force at the cabinet level to begin the discussions with the fund. You've seen more than enough times of Ghana going to the IMF. 16 programs in the past, number 17 on its way. That is, if we're able to meet debt sustainability levels, because the mere fact that you go knocking on the IMF's doors does not necessarily mean it will grant you entry. But having to go back to the IMF at this juncture, what does it mean for you as a Ghanaian?
I really, as a Ghanaian, you want me to think for a lot of people. To me, I don't see anything.
No, speak for yourself as a Ghanaian.
For me, I don't see anything wrong with going to the IMF. The problem with going to the IMF is what the regime has made it. We realized that in the past regime, because they went for a bailout, they were called incompetent and inept and all kinds of things. But we always should remember that we are not an island. And therefore, when external shocks come, you need somebody to support you. You need somebody to hold you out. But then you can ask the questions, what about those countries that are sailing through despite the COVID-19 and the Ukraine-Russian war? They put their house in order. We probably did not do it as well as they did. So we have to go to the IMF for a bailout. Again, we're talking about just debt sustainability. And I wonder if we will pass that test, because our debts have risen astronomically. But I believe that even when you sit at the table to negotiate, there are certain areas that are very dire that need to be taken care of. And if the IMF listens, we are part of the IMF, we are a contributing country to the IMF, so they definitely will help us. What will happen, I believe, is that they're going to give us stringent conditionalities. And that is what will probably make our situation worse as individuals in the beginning. But that, again, will fade if we keep to our side of the bargain and we work properly. I must say that as a country, our productivity levels are very low. We are not producing anything. We are probably importing everything. And that is not good for us. And that is probably what has gotten us where we are.
The lack of industrialization capacity. We're importing practically everything, including matches and toothpicks. Some of these we produce here, but when you're still importing these basic items, it becomes a bit of a problem. So we've had 17 programs already. This will be the 18th one. And on the back of that, like I was indicating, teacher unions are saying, because sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes when the IMF steps in, there are certain cuts, and one of those areas that often is affected is public sector wages and even employment moving forward. And that is the fear of some of these unions. In fact, the TUC was saying government shouldn't go the way of the IMF, but we find ourselves in dire straits. The finance minister, up until the 11th hour, has said would never go there. Kojo Oppong-Nkrumah information minister, had been carrying the same story, but now he says we're going to need about $3 billion, hopefully, from the IMF, with all doors being shut in our faces. We can only wish the best for Ghana as we go back into this program, if we do make it, and hope that eventually this will maybe not save our economy, but help us stabilize and get to the point where we can do better again. I guess that is the hope.
Whilst we are looking at the IMF helping out, we need to put our house in order. I think that we are stifling ourselves with a high inflation, high interest rates, because then people cannot really get their businesses up and running. If you have fuel hikes every other week, transport costs go up for people who are running businesses, who have to probably use generators or other kinds of machinery, then we need to be really looking at how we're going to condition ourselves to ensure that our industries are up and running, that we are producing. I mean, when you look at other countries around us, and Rwanda and Tanzania are doing fantastically well when it comes to making sure that they are growing, they are developing. Why aren't we doing the same? Why can't we do the same? Why aren't we working on our attitude as a people to ensure that we are being productive and that we are developing our country, and we are making sure that the nation is up to a position where we want it to be. We want to be a developed country, but with the kind of attitudes that we all have, both those in the public sector and those in the private sector, who are always looking inward. If we don't look at making sure that everybody is comfortable and everybody is working, and productivity is what is the backbone of the economy, then we definitely won't go anywhere. And we should stop playing politics with the economy all the time.
I totally agree with you.
If it's one regime, it is a certain way. If it is another regime, it is another way. We should build consensus. and make sure that this nation, which is the only one that I belong to, will develop and will be something that I can stand out and be proud of.
Right. Let's wrap with the Daily Graphic on the back page. It says 3 to investigate sale of Northern Regional public lands. And we've got to hear quite a number of these in recent times. But committee to submit report in 2 weeks. Now, a 3-member committee has been set up to investigate allegations of the sale of public lands to private persons in the Northern region. This follows allegations that public lands belonging to institutions such as the health, prisons, and education services were being sold to private individuals. Pending the said investigations, the Executive Secretary of the Lands Commission has been directed, pursuant to the previous policy directives, to halt the processing, registering, and transfer of any interest in any public land in the Northern region. But is it becoming one too many? We've heard a number of incidents, some that I cannot mention because they've not got to the point where it's in the mainstream media, but at least one popular one has been the issue to do with Sir John, and we keep hearing more and more. Now, this one up north. Quick reactions?
My question has always been who's the one selling the public lands? If the public lands are being held by the state, and the state is not the one selling, then who is selling? Because then it becomes a very difficult thing to really put a finger on. If it's not the state that is selling, then whoever is selling it is engaging in a criminal activity. But if the state is selling it, who are they selling it to and why? So I believe that the state has to come out and investigate.
Interestingly, per the law, yes, while you may think of the Lands and Natural Resources Ministry and the Works and Housing Ministry, per our constitution, the president holds all of these in trust for Ghanaians. The president holds it in trust for Ghanaians.
So if he has not given the go-ahead to sell, then who is selling?
Right.
And why aren't we bringing the people who are selling our state lands to book?
Let's look at the Ghanaian Times. I can understand your confusion there. Same going on in my mind. But 4 teacher unions down tools nationwide declare strike to press home demand for COLA. Same story we've been looking at in the Daily Graphic. Amidst economic challenges, President holds breakfast meeting with major players in private sector. Major Mahama murder case, prima facie case made against 14 accused persons. But let's look at this one on page 7. NHI to pay hospitals 30% more for medicines. That story on page 7 of the newspaper. And the NHIA says it will pay hospitals 30% more for medicines in order to ensure an expansive health service coverage across the country. This development comes on the back of an upward review of the National Health Insurance Scheme medicine and service tariffs in accordance with the NHIA's Act 852, that is Act 2012, and signed by the NHIA's Chief Executive Officer, Dr. Bernard Okubboy. This was contained in a statement issued by the NHIA Corporate Affairs Directorate and copied by the Ghanaian Times yesterday. And quoting him, he says, in line with standard practices, all key stakeholders were involved in the process of the review. The average impact of the services tariffs across all provider types in the public sectors is about 35% increment from the previous service tariffs. What does this mean to you, Liz? We've been told that there are going to be some additions, for example, when it comes to sickle cell anemia, hydroxyurea being prominent among those going to be added there, especially for children. Gains being made, most definitely.
I won't say.
Or are you unmoved looking at the, your face, your reaction to the story?
No, I was just going to say I won't say I understand what he said fully. If I did, then probably I'd be able to make comments. When he says 30% increment.
So they're going to be paying the hospitals 30% more for medicine, the value of medicine they give out. That's the NHIA. So, the hospital, the system that we go through, and then the claims are made by the hospitals to the NHIA. So there's going to be a 30% adjustment. And I was sneaking in the bit about sickle cell anemia now also coming on board, with hydroxyurea being part of the medication, which formerly wasn't the case.
If that is what is going to happen, then it is a good thing, and it is something that we should support, as long as it does not have anything to do with the premium that we are paying on the NHS. If what we are paying remains the same, and yet a lot more money is going to go into what we are paying for, as per the insurance, then it is a good thing, and it is something that must be carried out.
All right, so let's quickly do this. On the back page of the paper, there is promote youth participation in governance. That's according to participants. These were participants at the two-day summit who were calling on West African governments to promote youth participation in political governance at all levels. And according to them, a 40% quota system should be promoted while creating intergenerational platforms for experience sharing in good governance. This was contained in a communique and read by the African Union Youth Ambassador Mohamed Kunta in Accra on Thursday. That is the story I'll wrap with in the Ghanaian Times newspaper. The youth calling for more participation in governance. Right call?
Yes. It's a very good call. We need the youth also to play its role and to play its role fully. But again, you have to look at the competence of the youth that you are engaging with, making sure that we are not doing the same things that we were doing in the past. So you're not just bringing in youth because they are youth, but we are bringing in youth because we know they're competent and they understand the situations that we're dealing with. We need youth who understand governance, and we need to teach them governance properly, so that as future leaders, when they're taking over, they know what they're getting into. But with the current situation where we walk around and people who are 40 and 45 still consider themselves to be the youth, I'm wondering who we are looking at. And so we should go back to look at the youth as defined by the UN between the ages of 18 and 35. Those are the ones that are considered to be the youth, and we should have them properly engaged, and we should school them. They need to be educated. And so for me, the question then comes to our civic education that is on the back burner. I think that if we need the youth, we need to get them to understand and to know history and to be able to contribute meaningfully to our development and our progress.
Let's get into the Daily Guide newspaper now, and all the other stories we've looked at, but we can check out some other stories here as well, other headlines. On the international front, we've not done any international stories yet. I'll just sneak these in. Tens of thousands told to evacuate flooded Sydney suburbs, that's in Australia. And fresh evacuation orders were issued for tens of thousands of Sydney residents on Monday after relentless rains triggered floods for the third time this year in some low-lying suburbs. An intense low-pressure system off Australia's east coast is forecast to bring heavy rain through Monday across New South Wales after several places in the state were hit with about a month's worth over the weekend. So you see the difference. It's pelting outside and only God knows what will happen. But over the weekend, over a few days, 2 to 3 days, they got the rainfall they would expect in an entire month. And that's the difference. That is why these places are flooding. There's also two stories related to the Catholic faithful. Pope Francis denies plans to resign soon, and manhunt for missing priests in Nigeria. And two men, Father Udo Peter and Father Philemon Obo, were abducted by gunmen along a motorway linking the cities of Benin and Auchi. It comes a week after gunmen killed a priest, Father Christopher Odia, near Auchi. And this has been going on for a while in Nigeria. Quick reactions, flooding the Catholic Church and...
The flooding, it's as a result of climate change, isn't it? And we still are not heeding to the warnings of those who are engaging us on climate change and asking that we change our attitudes towards our environment and the growth of our environment. So if we do not do that and we leave things to be the way they are, we still would experience all kinds of floodings and all kinds of patterns, different patterns in the rain patterns that we have had over the years. And I think that it is for us as a people, and I'm not talking here only, I'm talking across the world, because it's not only in Australia that we have seen floodings. We've seen landslides and floodings in the Philippines and other areas of the world. And it's all because we have not heeded to the warnings about climate change. And so we should begin as a people to take it seriously and to work towards ensuring that we are keeping our environment safe and ensure that we are keeping our country safe. And when you talk about flooding in Australia, you realize that they're able to evacuate the people, even as the rains were coming. When it comes to us in Ghana, there's very little we can do. We hardly have even the logistics for which to rescue people. So we should be very careful, and we should be a step ahead. I think that Meteo has been doing very well lately, because when they give us warnings, we realize that it is accurate. And when it's accurate, then you can work with it. So I'd say kudos to Meteo, they're doing well, and we want to see more. But then we need to strengthen the agencies that will come on board if perchance anything happens. When it comes to flooding, NADMO and all fire service and the Navy and all those who would go to rescue people who are stuck in floods should have the necessary logistics to be able to do so. So we do not lose anybody to the fate of having to drown in floodwater.
Right. Let's wrap with the Daily Guide newspaper. There's an interesting fad, a new trend that has taken, should I say, Accra by storm. It has to do with slay queens scrambling for mansions. And I don't know whether you know any of these, but Jackie Appiah, longtime actress and businesswoman, so to speak, Tracy Boache, same. And the new fad is that they are showing off their mansions, so to speak, all of them in East Legon. And Jackie Appiah put up these videos. Some said it wasn't right, it wasn't the best thing to have been done. Some even taunted her on social media. Then Tracy Boache, whom we all know, also came through with hers. She shared the video of a mansion saying, "At least it is mine, oh, one of my mansions, 31 years. Chai." Well, it is what it is, isn't it? And these two ladies doing the flaunting, I don't know whether it's necessary though, but I mean, everyone, different strokes for different folks. So that is the story there. Any quick reactions, Liz? All right, so let's get into some other newspapers quickly. The Finder, what have they found? IMF negotiations begin tomorrow. That story is on page 11. We have the bit about the teachers' unions asking for COLA. And then going to IMF is a tragic mistake, according to the TUC. NHI to pay hospitals 30% more. We've done that. IMF bailout. Can Ghana win with collective effort? So let's look at the IMF question from the two angles. So page 4 of the paper has the first story. And it says the Trades Union Congress has described the government's request for International Monetary Fund bailout as a tragic mistake and a sad one for Ghana. This will be the 18th time our country's economy will be handed over to the IMF to manage. It is very sad because it is a clear indication that we cannot manage our own affairs, the TUC said in a statement. Signed by Dr. Yao Ba, Secretary General, the TUC acknowledged the impact of global developments on Ghana's economy. But let me quickly bring in the one on page 7. IMF bailout. Ghana can win with collective effort. And Ghana has, since the onset of the novel coronavirus in March 2020, been confronted with significant fiscal and debt sustainability challenges. The article goes on to talk about some of what has been done in that respect, and pictured there Dr. John Kuma, MP for Ejiso and Deputy Finance Minister. The question is, going there the 18th time, will this finally make the center hold? Those are some questions, nagging questions on our minds. Let's look at the Daily Statesman newspaper. Strong push for rent reforms, and stakeholders review existing rent laws. There's also Operation Clean Your Frontage Task Force cautioned against extortion. And there's Joseph Kujo. Government will manage economy out of IMF. So we've not even entered yet, but we are being told that government will manage the economy out of it. MCE supports flood victims with relief items, and Ibn Chambers withdraws as ECOWAS envoy to Guinea. We'll be bringing you details of some of these stories. But let's take a quick look at some other headlines right before we proceed. There's also the Meridian and the Hawk newspaper. I'll just wrap with them this morning. BOST ranked 8th on Public Enterprises League table. Incompetence, corruption led Mahama to IMF. That's according to CVM founder. And NDC will boot out NPP in 2024 elections, as Yedun Ketia says so. Finally, the Hawk newspaper. Nana will hand over to NPP government. Bute says so. And then Ghana returns to old banker 3 years after exiting the program. That's all talk about the IMF. Well, that is how we draw the curtains this morning on the news review. Unfortunately, we lost Liz Hayfon-Asari along the way, but thank you all the same if you're watching for joining the conversation. Now, as we veer into sports this morning, we bring you an exclusive with former Black Stars goalie Adam Kwarise. Remember him? He's been sharing some thoughts with George Addo Jr. on the Black Stars goalkeepers, players, and more. That up next. Stay.